one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was like the relationship between digital twins and edge computing.
Yeah. I mean, I know you've talked to folks about digital twins before, and I
Yeah,
spend a lot of time. There's that idea of a digital twin model that you may create one time that represents a base class or an asset class, like my car.
yeah,
I always like to talk in terms of cars because everybody can understand it.
yes, yes,
And so if it's a, whatever, a Ford F-150 pickup truck is the asset model, and then the individual digital twin instances that are inherited from that model are the instances of all the Ford F-150 pickup trucks that are out there for sale. But it goes further than that. So at the model level, you define all the properties that make it up. And so you might say, okay, my digital twin for this truck is information about the engine and oil pressure and the transmission and the tire pressure and speed and all the things we think about that a car or a truck does. Um, all those things in the end are still defined and stored in a database somewhere,
yeah,
right? It could be a relational database. It could be NoSQL kind of object thing. It just depends on what you want to do. But you're defining this model. You define all the properties of it, the names of all those sensors, like right front tire pressure. You'll say that the data type is maybe integer
yeah,
or a float, whatever, and then you might say the unit of measure is pressure. And the reason you do all those extra steps is because you're trying to help your analytics, because your analytics don't necessarily understand the data that's coming at it. But if it's almost, think of this digital twin model as a data dictionary, for all your audience members that maybe are database people,
yeah,
database administrator. That's really what it is. It's a definition, it's a data dictionary, so that your bot or your analytics can look at and go, oh, this data, here's its name, it's an integer, and its unit of measure is pressure. I know what that is. And so it can interact with that there. And then you have your digital twin, the actual instances that are catching the real data from the real machine. But there's all kinds of things. You have telemetry properties that are one-to-one relationship with things like temperature and humidity and acceleration and all those sensors. You may also have virtual kind of properties on your twin that don't map one-to-one with a particular sensor. Maybe it's a calculation
yeah,
between sensors that gives you a value there. You also may have defined command and control properties in a digital twin that says, hey, this machine has actuators and I can send a command to it. Like maybe I'm going to tell the motor, instead of going at 10,000 revolutions per minute, I want to go just 7,500. And so you'll define what is the name of that command that I can call. And again, what's the data type? What's the unit measure, so that my analytics or my programming software knows how to call that thing correctly. But yeah, you define all those kinds of things in the twin, and then those definitions are stored in a database. And then you could use, like we all have different backgrounds of doing stuff. I've been a programmer and an architect for probably too long. I used to do all this stuff when I was at Microsoft. I did a lot of work with
yeah,
data replication and with SQL Server, and we used to have our Windows Mobile and Windows Phone devices a long time ago, and we used to have a little tiny database called SQL Server CE or SQL Server Compact. But you could replicate the data to that small database, and then you can have offline and build apps, right, or business solutions.
yeah,
Think of it that way. Imagine now I've defined my digital twins and they're in my database on my server in my cloud.
yeah,
What if my edge nodes, they also have a smaller database? I may have my big giant
yeah,
database here, but I
yeah,
might use a small, because some of these databases could, like SQLite or,
yes,
little tiny embedded databases. You could imagine, so that when we talk about doing digital twins at the edge, maybe I'm just going to replicate those definitions from the database structure to a different database structure, like in a tiny embedded database, so that they're sitting there locally. And then you'll perform the exact same functions there with but you don't need that giant compute power that the cloud has,
Yeah.
because I'm only talking to a limited number of devices, right? And so I can do that. And it could be SQLite, but you can get MySQL or PostgreSQL running in pretty smaller machines as well. So anyway, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's certainly how you can take all those definitions and twin structures and just put that data model down locally on a smaller database.